Good morning. My name is Jace Hargis, and I can't thank you enough for joining us here on a summer Monday morning adventure. I think I mentioned briefly that this is my first workshop. I've been here for, I think this is almost 3 months, and so I'm brand new to UCSD. I've been doing faculty development for about 17 years, but only 3 months here at UCSD. So I've been really fortunate. What I've tried to do is I've tried to connect with some faculty. I've met with about 80, 85 different people one-on-one, and my goal is to meet the other 855 of you somehow throughout the next 10 years, I think. So I appreciate you showing up and you having some interest in this particular workshop. I'd like to walk through a little bit of what we are and what we're all about, so in case you're interested in some things for the future, and in case you didn't mention, there's probably a little more things going on in the background than what normally you would see. So these are our wonderful folks. I just imagine that you haven't already met most of those, but they're the folks from AMS, but now ETS, and EdTech Services, and they're going to be doing some great stuff at capturing some of the experiences that we're doing here, as well as I'll be referring to some of the possible active learning things that you can do with technology. These guys are amazing resources for those. So let me just jump in really quick, and I do want to share, again, this will only take about 4 to 5 minutes of the 90 minutes that I'm so glad that you're able to join us for, but I do think that we want to share a little bit about this center. I have no idea who knows about, just by show of hands, who knows about the Teaching and Learning Commons? Okay, cool. Who knows about the Center for Engaged Teaching? All right, cool. So, welcome, come on in. We just started. So if you don't, I'd like to share with you a little bit about this. Basically, I guess a couple years ago, there was an education initiative that came up with this concept of the Teaching and Learning Commons, and there's 2 departments. There's a Center for Engaged Learning and a Center for Engaged Teaching. I'm really fortunate to be the inaugural director for the Center for Engaged Teaching, and what we typically do is these types of things. We do a lot of workshops, and I'll share with you some of the services that we do as well. But I wanted to start off with kind of this philosophy on what we believe in. What we're going to try to do is build a lot of relationships within our center, and I have to be really honest that today, the past 3 months, and probably the next 3 to 4 months, this is the center right here. We have one person that's in the center. We are looking, and we're going to hire some more people, but when I say we, it's really kind of it's the future we, but we're going to try to build relationships with you and also try to help each other get more connected in this huge campus doing some exciting things. We like to get our hands dirty, so we like to get out there with you and kind of work with you and maybe try to do some of the heavy lifting. And through some of these programs, I think you might see what we mean by that is trying to really, we know a lot about the background on pedagogy, what I call andragogy research, and we want to try to help you work with that as well as we can to continue to do some of the great stuff that you're doing. Lots of collaborations. Right now we don't have a physical space, but we hope to have a physical space at some point so we can get people together, talk, mingle, interact, and share some of the great things that you're doing across disciplines. We like to take risk. We like to take a lot of risks so that we can share some of those outcomes, bump our head, kind of be on the bleeding edge, so maybe we can share some of those lessons with you so you don't have to do as much about that. We do believe in what's called SOTL. If there's one thing I'd like you to think about me now and in the future is this funky acronym SOTL, which stands for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And for what it's worth, there's this guy, Ernest Boyer, in 1990, came out with a book called Scholarship Reconsidered, and he redefined scholarship in 4 ways. The scholarship of discovery, which we do a lot of here. That's traditional scholarship. But also the scholarship of application, integration, and the scholarship of teaching and learning. And in its simplest forms, what this is finding a way to take your current research methods, everyone's a researcher here, to take those and use those same methodologies in exploring your teaching. So, and you do this every day. You may admit to it, but you're driving home after class and you're thinking, why didn't that work? Why did it work? You know, I did this last time a year ago and it was perfect, but for some reason it fell flat. That's the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning in its rawest form. What we try to help you do is we take that, help you develop some instruments to gather some data that are reliable and consistent, and maybe write that up as a white paper, a blog, or even a publication. So I've been really successful to have over about 100 publications. This is what I've been doing the past 20 years. My research agenda is on emerging technology integration in the classroom. And so we play with a lot of things and see how it works. And then we try to share that with folks so that you don't have to make the same mistakes over and over again. So there's one thing that you leave, from my point of view. SOTL will be kind of an umbrella philosophy for the center because it envelops everything that we're about. We want to try to help engagement in teaching, but we also want to find out empirically how that worked. Did it work? What were the steps that worked, right? And so SOTL will be one way that we do that. And finally, one of our philosophies is we believe that there's many, many, many ways to be an effective teacher. So you'll hear me talk about lecture today. You'll hear me talk about engaged learning. What I love about this position is that it's challenging to work with faculty across disciplines with their own individual philosophies and needs. I don't know how many people have seen this movie, so I never know if they get this metaphor, but he had a very different way of teaching. And so I think that there's lots and lots and lots of ways to do effective teaching. We will do these workshops, but I feel like I'm not a big workshop fan because I'm going to talk with you and I don't know you and I don't know where you're from and what. So I'm going to do this as an introduction. I'd love to have a follow-up and work with you individually to really get down to what you're all about and who you're teaching, what your strengths are, and then I can try to provide some things that might be able to enhance that. So hopefully this is the first conversation of many, 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 many conversations. So we do have some services currently. These are the ones that I've been working on the past couple decades. We do what's called a course design or course redesign. And what this is, it's 3 days. Some people say, can't you get that done in like an hour or two? And I want to say, my background's in chemistry, and I can't teach you chemistry in an hour or two. So to think about redesigning your entire course. So we walk through Wiggins and McTighe, a backward design model where I help you look at outcomes and evidence and experientials, learning type things. And so this takes quite a bit of time, 3 full days, but at the end of those 3 full days, you'll have a completely redesigned course with a redesigned syllabus ready to go for your next session. So if you're interested at all, please send me an email. I'd love to get another cohort up for August. I'd like to basically offer one of these every month in the summer and maybe one in December. Lots of consultations. I'm already meeting a lot with faculty, and I think there's a bit of some people not sure what that means. It's like, I don't need a consultation. That's not really what this is all about. It's simply about me trying to understand more fully what's going on so that we can build our services. Most of the time, this turns out to being, hey, wow, you're doing some really cool things. Can we showcase those? Can we share those more widely? So most good centers for teaching and learning, about 80% of the people that engage in them are the really good teachers that want to become better. Sometimes people think, oh, I got low CAPE scores, so I'll send them to Jace. Like, please don't do that, because I become that guy on campus that when you see that with me, you're not the person you want to be seen with. So this is all about really trying to become better all the time. I do classroom observations, which I think some people do peer observations. I've got a format that I've been using for probably 10 years. Just wrote a paper last summer of a 10-year data collection of 4 different universities on that observation method. It's a bit unique in that it collects quantitative and qualitative, but the unique portion is that I also do a faculty flow diagram where I actually mark and diagram where people are at, what students are doing, who are saying, how they're engaged, and I show that to the faculty, and it's non-evaluation. It's an observation, not an evaluation, and then faculty kind of make sense of what that is and figure out what they want to do with that. Learning communities, getting people together, thinking about common topics. We'll be offering a higher education, teaching in higher education short course, new faculty supportive course, SOTL, which you'll never get enough of, and lots and lots and lots of workshops. These are workshops that I have done before, and I'm happy to do them, but I really want to know more what kind of workshops that you're looking for. That was the kind of the genesis of this group. I believe some of you had asked for this or had looked for some ideas about engagement learning. So once again, you'll be seeing some of the emails about these, but if there's anything that you would like to be done, fire it our way, and we'll make sure that we find a way to offer that. All right, now let's jump into that. That was, 6 minutes, 7 minutes? I apologize for the commercial, but hopefully it was worthwhile. We're going to jump into this today, and with any good presentation, any good experience or session, here's my outcomes. After we're done in the next 80 minutes or so, I'm hoping that we can integrate some of these teaching and learning active methods into our learning experiences. I hope we can maybe create some active learning spaces, and we'll talk about what that means. We're meeting here on purpose. We'd like for you to see what this space might look like. This space isn't for everybody all the time anywhere, but I hope that you see some advantages, and maybe we can talk about how we can make more of these spaces. And then obviously the last part is thinking about discussion as an active teaching and learning technique. All right, so what I don't want to do, which I think is the definition of irony or hypocrisy, is for me to talk about active learning. You should boo me out of here if that's what we're going to do. So we're going to do a little bit of active learning, but I promise, because I used to be sitting where you're sitting at some point, we're not going to do conga dances and anything that's going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to be very low threshold active learning, and you can engage in whatever level that you would like to, okay? The first one I want to do, because I'd like to talk about this concept about communication and how we communicate this active learning, is a pretty low threshold thing. I'd like you to find, okay, it looks good. Look to your partner And so everyone needs a partner to do this. It's really, really low threshold. And all you need to do is one of two things. Designate who's going to be the sender and who's going to be the receiver. Who's going to send and who's going to receive. Once you decide that, the receiver, please get a pen or pencil, put it in your hand. The receiver, put a pen or pencil in their hand, and then close your eyes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk around, and you'll need a thinner pen or pencil. I'm going to walk around and place a piece of paper once you have your eyes closed. I'm going to place a piece of paper in front of the receiver. The sender is going to gently place their hand on the spot. You'll know where the spot is. And then you're going to walk them through this activity without touching anything, just verbally. You're going to basically instruct them verbally on how to complete the activity. All right? Kind of weird, kind of mysterious. All right, we'll see how this goes. So once I see eyes closed, I will put down the piece of paper. Great, and you will position his hand on the right place. Eyes closed. All right, eyes closed, good, good, good. Eyes closed, you'll position his hand on the right spot. And then just go at it.
Now all you have to do actually is pull it like an inch towards you. And you're going to be straight toward it. Yeah, to the right. Yeah, but still mostly towards you. If you're on the right track. Just right, and that's towards our
Excellent. Yeah, let's go and open up our eyes. Take a look at our masterpiece. Great job. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this. I want to ask anybody to show their diagrams. We can kind of keep that to ourselves. Some may post it on your refrigerator.
We're not a master's in fine art.
There you go. So first of all, why do you think I did that? What was my goal, my purpose of having you do that? Oh, wow, it was so like noisy, and it just, what's that? Yeah, talk to each other. What else? Engage, active, right? And I wanted to do it kind of early on. People say, oh, I'll save that till the end, and by then we've kind of lost. I wanted right away to say, we're going to get active. Now, specifically, this activity, what do you think, like what's one of my goals of, I mean, it seems kind of silly, but I don't know if you seem like you had a good time, right? There was some really interesting, I heard a lot of left, no other left, right? And it was a fairly simple assignment, but for some reason, a few of you were struggling. Why?
Because we're not speaking the same language. Like if someone is saying going forward, like what angle?
Yeah, what's forward? What's forward? What is left? Your left, my left. And they get to clocks and angles and 90 degrees and all these things, right? And so it's really about this communication. So whenever we do active learning, you're going to realize, and you probably already have, it's really, really difficult to make sure that it's structured in a way that the outcomes happen. And so you almost have to pretend like they've got their eyes closed, they're blindfolded, they don't know what's going on. So you have to be overly prescriptive with some of the expectations. I also noticed that a few of you, I won't point it out, you missed something. The people with their eyes open missed something. They missed number 16. Now, it may seem like a small thing. The people that saw it were probably like, oh, how could you miss that? But about 80% of the people that do this, with their eyes open, miss number 16. Now, as we all probably know, does anyone know what this animal is?
Or a fish.
Sarah? It's a narwhal whale. So I intentionally picked something a little bit odd, right? I wanted to, because I didn't want you to jump to conclusions. So a narwhal is a tusked whale, right? And that's what that means. So if you think about if you didn't draw out to point 16, could you identify that as a narwhal? Probably not. That's the identifying characteristic of a narwhal. So sometimes we think this whole thing about active learning and communicating, if you miss one point, you could miss the entire concept. And so there's certain key points with active learning. You've got to think about what are those big questions? What are those driving questions? What's the essential thing that you need? And here, I almost don't care if you get anything else, but you need to get number 16. But for some odd reason, people miss number 16. Another metaphor with this a lot of times that I use is sometimes students see what we're doing is they show up to class and we give them a number every day, right? And they think, okay, I've got another piece of the puzzle. I've got another part of this. And now I'm going to do some engaged learning, but they can't quite put it together. Sometimes they put it together like you did. Good. Other times they don't. And so I always encourage people, especially with active learning, it's like that jigsaw puzzle. Show them the front box. Show them what that picture looks like. Show them the narwhal. So they know, they can anticipate, I'm going to have this tusk going out there. And so they know the storyline. But active learning, engaged learning is great. It's wonderful. But it also can be not. And I'm guessing you found that out one way or another in many of your experiences. All right, so that was the first thing. I wanted to get us to think about some of that instead of just jumping into some research. Because I always think that when I share this kind of information, I know that you folks, and being here at the UCSD, this is, we want to know empirically what works and what doesn't work. Lots of studies have been done out there. I'm not going to bore you with these. You can certainly get any of these citations. I'll send any of the information that I present today that you would like. But the bottom line is that there's not a secret anymore. It's not unknown. It's very clear that active, engaged learning can enhance, can benefit many, many things about teaching and learning. Keeping in mind that the three things we always look for are knowledge, skills, and dispositions. Knowledge, skills, and dispositions. So how can it increase? Their knowledge, their skills, and their dispositions. This particular study you probably are familiar with because it came out fairly recently. I think in 2014 by Freeman. This is kind of used over and over again. And I intentionally used this because they kind of looked at lecturing versus, I think they called it active learning. I would just call it lecturing versus non-lecturing. And then we can debate and talk about what lecturing really means. But obviously, they found some really nice gains. 1.5 times more higher achievement. And these were, for you social scientists, those were run with statistical significance. And so that means something within looking at the difference between the treatment group and the control group. But then again, people say lecture. Like, what is lecture? And this is a comment from a faculty that I've heard actually many times when we start to say, oh, lecture's terrible. And then faculty who lecture feel kind of bad. And they're like, oh, I'm a bad teacher. And then somebody comes back and says, so what I actually do is this. I have these series of short lectures, and they're broken up to get students thinking, talking, and doing. And I'll basically argue with them, and I'll say, you're not lecturing. And they're like, what? It's like, well, what am I doing? And it's not important that we put a label on it, but you are doing some of these things. And then we'll talk about, what are some of the expectations? And is it really structured? And are you getting those outcomes? Because just doing this may be good, but the bottom line is you have to make sure that you know where you're leading these folks. So when I say lecture, when you say lecture, when you hear lecture, it's not necessarily good or bad. I mean, we're not going to put an evaluation on that. It can be very effective. It also can be ineffective. This is not a reading slide. This is a slide to show a lot of, and again, I'll give you all these that you'd like. The small terms are basically the citations for these, but I just wanted to represent that this has been repeated across disciplines, across universities, large, small, private. It's one of these things of, there's no mystery anymore. Does it work? You share with me your discipline, and I'll send you a lit review that shows you how it works, why it works, and maybe some of the tools that does make it work. And I know that you're probably here because you're thinking that it does work and you don't need convincing, but many times I want to make sure that you know that we've got the background. This is part of that heavy lifting that we talk about. So I wanted to run through that. I'm not going to talk much more about the research, but I want us to kind of get to do some of these things. One of the things that I like about the active learning is that people say, but how do you do it? And where does it come from? And so what I've done is I work with a colleague of mine who works at the University of South Florida, and we've developed a list. And it's a list of 228 active learning strategies. And dramatic pause, okay? So that's pretty cool that because people say, well, I don't know what to do. I'm like, there's 228 of them. How could you almost not accidentally do a few of them? What I like to do for the next 30 to 40 minutes is I want us to kind of play with those because I want us to kind of get familiar. And my whole goal as the director and as working for the center is every day I want to basically set out a menu, a buffet of all different options because you're going to come to that table and you're going to say, I want a little bit of this and I want a little bit of this. My goal is to stay ahead of you and keep offering stuff because you need to be picky because what you do and your approach and your style is very different. Of course, before we end, I'll give you a list. I'll give you the URL that will take you to that list so that you can access it and play with it all you want. The list is broken up into categories. The categories are things like instructor, student, icebreakers, etc. So let's jump into playing with these. The first thing, I basically have grabbed about 6 or 7 that, I don't know, I've just seen over and over and over again. These seem to be the most popular of the 228, so I thought we would kind of play with those today. Student response systems, OneMinute Paper, ThinkPairShare, Muddiest Point. We're going to go through one slide on each one of these, and I'll explain what it is, and then you'll do it. I'll explain what it is, and you'll do it. Okay? We on board? I'm trying to interpret faces, and so far nobody's scowling at me, so I like it. The first one is this, and I'm glad that the ETS folks are here because this isn't a very old technique. I started doing student response systems at least 20, if not 30 years ago, and I simply did it because I wanted to know what was, imagine that, in the student's head, right? I would ask, so, any questions, right? The famous any questions. Or, does everybody get that? And everybody stands really still and doesn't look at you because they don't want to, commit either way. So I basically gave them out collared construction paper, little slivers, red, blue, and green. And I would put a question up on the board, and I'd say, if you think it's A, raise red. If you think it's B, raise the blue. C, whatever. Oh, well, it's not anonymous. OK, close your eyes. And boom, it's anonymous. It helped me out a lot because I would go through a concept. I would ask a question, and then I would see a sea of red. And I'm like, hey, red's the answer. I can move on. Or I'd see a sea of blue, and I go, ooh, I need to stop and take ownership of that, and I need to redirect. A little active learning, right? Pretty low threshold, non-committal. If I saw this psychedelic, I would say, whoa, I've really messed you up because you're all over the board. That was really useful to me. What they've done now is they've made it easier with all these neat little cool free technology type. I don't know how many people have worked with these. I think some of you have worked with the hard, I say they're clickers, physical objects, right? They have other types. They have Poll Everywhere, Plickers, Padlet, Twitter, even Google Slides, which is what I'm using here, part of the Google Docs, Google Drive. This is the Google Slide. And if you had computers, you could actually go online and comment. Send me a question, send me a comment that I could go look at on my pre-interview, and I could figure out what you're saying, what you're doing, and I could answer now, answer later. I could broadcast. So there's really neat ways that I can get inside your head, which is our, like, the holy grail of teaching, right? What are we thinking as an aggregate? If you have any questions about any of these, I'm not going to go into these. The ETS folks are absolutely experts in these. They'll walk you through these, and they'll help you get a. The one thing I will say, the Plickers is kind of cool, only because it's the lowest threshold. And a Plicker is a clicker. I don't know what the P stands for, but it's a clicker derivative in that the students don't need any device. You might be able to see they're holding up a piece of paper that looks like a barcode. And so they basically, it's got A, B, C, and D. So they hold it up in that direction. The faculty member has a mobile device, and they go, and then it shows a bar graph of what the responses were. Don't believe me, because I didn't believe me when I first saw it. I had to get it in my hand, and it's like one of those old-fashioned, Pac-Man or something, like it goes ding, 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 ding. And I did it for 200 people. And it worked. It was freaky, kind of. Free account, free little cards here to print out. So this is a really nice way to do it if you don't have people who always have some sort of device with them, right? Because you need devices for most of these things. Show up, piece of paper, boop. So I kind of like the Plickers. It's one of the newer, it's 4 or 5 years old. It's not new. All right, now we're going to get active and me stop talking. So the first one is a 1-minute paper. What I'd like for you to do, so a 1-minute paper is pretty self-explanatory. You do a 1-minute paper typically after you teach a concept, maybe at the end of the class or after a concept. And you simply say, take 1 minute and write on this paper, or write on this concept. So what we're going to do, if I'm assuming that you brought a piece of paper, if not, we can find some Post-it notes for you, because I don't do much paper, I apologize. I'd like for you to take 1 minute and write what changes can you make in your classroom to increase student engagement. And we're going to be hardcore on this because one of the biggest problems with active learning is that you lose track of time. And all of a sudden, you go over time, and you don't get to what you needed to cover. And then you're like, darn that active learning. It's my nemesis. It's the enemy. And really, the enemy was the clock. So starting now, 1 minute. Write for 1 minute. Don't worry about punctuations, anything else. Just kind of give me your ideas. What changes can you make to increase student engagement? All right, so most of the time I'll put up a timer so that the timer's the bad guy and it'll beep and I won't have to call everybody in, but that's a nice way for the 1 minute. You probably look at this, I don't know if you look at this and say, oh, I haven't got much written down. It's a part of kind of acculturating the students into try to write bullets, try to write your concepts down. This is a really nice way to look at a little bit of information. And as you're walking out of class, as you're walking through campus, just kind of flick through. Some people look at this as participation. I like to look at it as a formative assessment. What are some things that you were thinking about? I did some things for 30, 40 minutes, and you wrote, are we on the same page? Did you get some of the major things that I was hoping that you did? Or, again, did I completely miss the point? Take that same paper. Please, I'm sorry. Great question, great question. Would you grade those? Which turns into how many students do I have? What's my point? Sometimes I do grade them on a simple, did they do it? Sometimes I look for keywords. I have a rubric that I deliver to them ahead of time saying, I'm going to look for 1 or 2 major themes. If you miss the conceptual framework, then you're probably going to get a half a point. If you had a misconception, maybe. But I mainly do it for me. I tell them, I say, if you want me to be the best me as I can be, you need to give me what's going on in your head. And then I'll come back the next day and I'll say, oh, okay, this is what I heard. Here's some general themes, here's some trends, and I make some clarifications. It really comes down to your own personal thoughts, what you want to use this for, how many students you have, how many TAs you have. Yeah, great question.
And then you tell the students what the grading criteria were?
Absolutely. So if I'm going to use this in that way, I'll set up a rubric ahead of time and I'll say, we're going to be doing these 1-minute papers, 1 per week. I'm going to gather those. Here's the 3 points. Here's the 3 things, so that when they're doing that, they'll know. Because when you were doing this, you were just kind of writing. But maybe if you knew exactly the kind of things I was looking for, you would have been more focused on that. Yeah, I always try to be really, really clear about this engaged learning, because sometimes they think it's just fun. Doesn't mean it can't be fun and be useful too. Those two. Take your same piece of paper. Now we're going to do what's called a ThinkPairShare. Each of our little activity is going to kind of double up and build on each other. ThinkPairShares, and these are great for large classrooms because you can basically turn to your neighbor and you can basically say, okay, let me think about what I just wrote. I'm assuming you've done that. You're going to pair up with somebody next to you, and you're going to share. You give them 1 minute. One person shares for 1 minute. The other person shares for the other minute. 2 minutes in total, and you get to kind of do what's called self-talk, verbalize, which really helps you kind of understand if you understand the concepts or not. So take 1 minute. I'll tell you when to switch, and then we'll take another minute to the other person. Explain your 1-minute paper. And let's switch it up. Whoever was talking, now start listening. Switch it back. So that was a 1-minute paper. That was a ThinkPairShare. And I kind of hopefully that I didn't need to mention this, but part of this menu is that when you're doing this, I'm hoping you're thinking very concretely. Okay, you're talking about you and this, but I hope that you're thinking, okay, in my class, I know I do this, this, and this. Maybe I could use this for this day, this week, this concept, right? That's really key, is generalizing this to the kind of things that you're looking to do. So the next one we're going to jump right into is Muddiest Point. Muddiest Point is kind of the opposite of a 1-minute paper. I think about this, is that the 1-minute paper, you're talking about things that you know. The muddiest point is you're going to try to write something down that was really unclear to you. So you just had a conversation with your colleague. Try to write down what they said to you, maybe some things that are unclear, fragments, what was incomplete, anything about that didn't quite make sense to you of the conversation that you had with them. 1 minute. And you guys are amazing. You're like some of the best students, the best people I've ever, you're like, you're really going at it. I love this. Because sometimes people are like, yeah, I got this. That's great. That's great. So no matter what you wrote, keep in mind the whole point of this is the processing. It's the reflection. That's the key. And if you notice already, we did a little bit of, the two of you working. You did a little bit of you writing by yourself. You did a little bit of you talking. The active learning really should shake some of that up and being intentional about spreading that out. The next thing is a little more spreading out. So I haven't got you standing up yet. I always like people to stand up at least once in the middle of a session. The next thing we're going to do is what's called concept mapping. Anyone hear about this before? Mind mapping? Yeah, it's basically it's a really cool device. I use a lot of different ways as a pre-assessment. What do students know about this concept before we start? But ultimately, it's got these ideas, and you make connections between the ideas. This is different than historically when we used to ask students to define a particular term, and they may understand that, but they wouldn't understand the connections between other terms, and they wouldn't understand the conceptual framework holistically. This allows you to track through that and be able to look at one to the other. And so we're going to do one of those. If you see at the middle of your table, there's the little Post-it notes. If you'll grab a packet of those, there should be 3 in each one of those. And what I'd simply like you to do is to write 1 word on each, so 3 words in total, on anything to do with what you think about when you hear the word technology. So just write 1 word on each Post-it, 3 Post-its, 3 words. Any word that comes to mind when you personally think of the word technology. No right or wrong answer. Just write it down. Great, all right. And if you're finished, go ahead and stand up. Always got to do a little bit of standing. I know people think, oh my gosh, he's going to make me do something. That's cool. Yeah. Excellent. So here's 1 group. And Excellent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Excellent. Perfect. All right. And what I'd like you to do is, if you'll see on each side of us, I'm going to turn some lights on. Yeah, like I'm going to be able to do that. On each side of us, if you five walk over to that board and take these, and you're going to create a concept map, and you six walk over to this board, you're going to create a concept map, and it's basically going to be looking, talking at these, pop it up there, let me get you a marker, and you're going to kind of make sense of these by talking to each other, collaborating, and then drawing some sort of lines with representations on what those mean to you. Excellent, go at it. All right, we're going to do a little side activity called pass the pen. So whoever's holding the pen, pass it to somebody else in your group. Whoever's holding the pen, pass it to somebody else. Excellent. This is great. By the way, that was just spectacular. I love kind of hear the conversations, like what just happened. You didn't just sit in your seats, right? When I asked you kindly to stand up, you all did. When I asked you to do X, Y, you did. You had these great conversations. I mean, you probably noticed the dynamic, and if you really are reflective, you're thinking similar things happen in my class, right? Some students, hang back, others come up to the board, and if that's fine, that's fine. One little thing that we did, we passed the pen. That tends to get some other people involved. Great conversations, probably better conversations and discussions and prompts than I could have provided. So many times we think that we've got to give these, but if you're talking amongst yourself, not only are there better conversations, but you're probably going to remember it more than if I were to, the faculty, the presenter would have said that. So that's why, hey, is that this is really kind of cool, and hopefully you're thinking, how could I do this with my students? How do I logistically do this? Do I have the kind of room to do this? Is it going to take a bunch of time? What's going to be their outcome? These are really critical questions. I'm not here to say, hey, this is great, this is perfect, do this all the time. You've got to really be careful when you do these because you want to make sure that it adds to and not somehow distracts and takes them in a different direction. So the next, I think this is the last active learning, which was going to take a little bit longer. The concept map took a bit. This one really seems to be kind of both fun and highly what we call synthetic. If you know much about Bloom's taxonomy, knowledge comprehension, application analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, this is a very synthetic approach. And my goal of doing this one is to get you to play with that list of 228. So it's basically trying to develop a commercial. And a commercial means you have to understand a lot of parts, a lot of concepts, and boil it down to a very few small, concise statement. And what this is, you're going to basically, in your groups, you can kind of stay in whatever groups you'd like or make them two big groups. You're going to storyboard. And storyboarding, if you haven't done it before, is a really cool way to represent this conceptual framework because you've got to understand a lot, break it down into these really finely kind of margins of understandings of these concepts, and you're going to do those on the little whiteboards that you've got on your tables. You're going to basically storyboard a concept. Now, what concept are you going to do? You're going to select one or two from that list of 228. Now, what I was hoping, and again, I'm going to need to know the system, is that everybody would have some sort of device on them that they could go to this website and they could bring it out. If you don't have that, that's cool. I've got a truncated list that I can share with you of 30, and I'll just go and toss one on each sheet. And if you will, jump into this, and again, if you guys want to join one of the other groups or you want to do your own, I'll even give you a couple. So, we're going to spend a chunk of time for you to review these. My goal is that you get to know these a little bit more. Select your favorite one. And then develop a storyboard on how that would look like in your classrooms. So I'll give you some time to look at those.
Yeah. Which I've done this ThinkPairShare thing before. I've done this OneMinute Paper thing.
There's your whiteboard, there's your eraser,
This one very interesting.
there's your backup eraser.
Because, like, I'm always going
You got a marker.
so it's like a spring in the sense that it.
Springs, and he's explaining it to a chemistry student. He's like, "Oh, I get it. I don't know."
Just based on what items are frequencies or.
Okay, so maybe in between here. Let's see.
Then you could have a picture of him sleeping and a picture of him.
great job. This is another reason why I don't really like workshops, because I have to stop all this great work, because there's only so much you can get done in an hour, hour and a half. I don't know about you, but if you notice, there was a lot of conversations and thinkings and reroutings and debates going on, and this is the kind of stuff that we'd love to see happen in our classrooms, but either we don't have enough time, or some of these issues come up about these things. When we do the course redesign, if you're interested, we actually spend some time, we do something similar, and then we actually create a commercial. I give faculty, I give them about 30, 45 minutes. They go out and they blow me away. They come back with iMovies and direction and productions, and it's just amazing stuff. And I wasn't sure what to expect when I first did this. I thought they would come back with PowerPoints, and they didn't. And what made me, not only was I really just amazed, but I thought, no offense, if you folks can do that, what can the students do, right? And with very little instruction, except just do a commercial. And there's usually one person that has an iPhone and one person that kind of knows how to do some editing, and all of a sudden you've got this cool product. So I really appreciate you jumping into this. Again, a lot of different ways we can debrief this. I'm not going to go through the debriefing, but the process was what was really important, and I hope that you're thinking about this. You don't have to do this in class. You can do commercials outside of class. You can do them for formative assessments. By the way, if you want a link to this, you can certainly just send me an email, or I'll send it out to everybody. But the list of 228 looks like this, and so it's come from various sources, but it's a living, breathing document. And the reason why, I'll show you, if you scan through, you can just see just item after item after item after item after item after item. I can't imagine you wouldn't find one or two of those, but then at the very bottom, it's got something cool in that if you are doing something really neat, you can actually suggest it. And you can see my name happens to be up here because I've suggested a few of these, and we'll add. We have a little bit of a review committee. A colleague of mine, Dr. Kevin Yee at the University of South Florida, we basically review these, make sure it hasn't been done, and we add it to that list. So don't feel like you just need to take. You can certainly give and contribute to this ongoing list of cool active learning techniques. All right, now let's get into the home stretch, and we're going to wrap up some of this stuff. I promised you in the outcomes a couple things talking about active learning. We did that. That was the big outcome. Secondly, was looking at discussion, and the final thing we'll wrap up in just a few minutes with spaces. We talked about lecturing as an active learning. Discussions can be active learning as well. I do want to point out a few things that are advisable when you want to hold a discussion, right? A discussion it works well if you get people actually discussing conversations, but also productive. So it's really important that you create this environment. And it sounds easy to do, but sometimes we overlook things like creating this safe environment. So what we mean by that is when somebody says something, one of my favorite professors in my doctoral program says, sometimes there's really not a polite way to say you're wrong. But you've got to find a way to keep people participating, because if they feel like they're wrong, they're going to shut down, and then everyone else starts to shut down. So you've got to find this way of not saying you're right when you're wrong, but also keep that environment productive and safe and highly participatory. Your job is to offer a lot of what's called divergent prompts. Never close the loop, right? You want to basically ask things, not what's your favorite color or what's this number, but ask things that keeps them to kind of ask questions and ultimately reward folks that start to ask other questions. Because they'll want to close that loop. They'll want to say, oh, here's the answer, I'm done. And you want to say, actually, no, that the real value is you coming up with more questions about this discussion. You want to scaffold this conceptual framework. It's these little breadcrumbs. You know the storyline. You know what they need to be. They don't. So you need to continue to scaffold that and give them the kind of information and build in little bits. Sometimes you build too quick. You realize they've caused some misconceptions. You've got to come back and re-scaffold those. During those conversations, you can have it. It's like a good attorney. You've got to know the answer to the question, and you've got to know their responses before you even ask it. That's because you're good and you're experts at what you do. Support argumentative skills. That doesn't mean that just because you're raising your voice, that's not an argument. And so you've got to work with those. You probably see some students that like to dominate, other students that like to kind of sit in the back. In andragogy, you see a lot what's called the T box. Students come in and sit in the T box on purpose. The T box is the front and the middle. And they'll sit there. And if you think about your classes, who's raising their hand? Who's talking? The T box people. What we call the nesters are the ones over in the corner. Now some people say, well, how do I get them to talk? My question first is, do you want them to talk? I've been in classes before where I've never said a word, but I've had a good time and I've enjoyed it. So you've got to think about who they are, how you function. If you want to get them engaged, then you can do that with some of these discussions. But if you think they're going to talk out loud over and over again, they sat there for a reason. They want to hide. So maybe doing more of these. Everybody was talking today in groups of 4 and 5. And lastly, you want to think about this proximity control, which is simply this. walking out amongst the students, getting within a couple meters. The research indicates that when you're within that close, students will ask more questions. And typically, if you get this close, the quiet students will ask a question quietly. A little technique that you may want to work on is when they start to speak, you want to do something rude, which is walk away from them. The natural propensity is to walk towards them, right? But you want to walk away. Why do you want to walk away? You want to get them to project, right? And so they'll do that because they're speaking to you and you want them to speak to everybody. So proximity control, marking is another interesting technique. If I've got somebody off task, I'll simply walk over and I'll just lay my finger on the desk. I won't touch them, I'll just lay it on the desk. I'll keep on talking. That's called marking. When this person says, whoa, something's going on here, everyone else says something's going on here, they can get on task and you keep right on moving. It's chewing gum, walking, patting, you got to do it all at once, and you got to really be in tune with this stuff. So this whole concept of managing the classroom dynamics, especially with active learning, is incredibly important. I always end with a little bit of assessment. If you could grab one of those yellow Post-it and answer these 3 questions, write a 1-sentence summary of what happened here today, write one idea that you might use, and then write a 1 word that describes how you feel right now. This is a knowledge, skills, and dispositions that I spoke of. I want to thank everybody again. I've had a good time. Hopefully you haven't had too bad a time, and I hope this is the first conversation. Please let us know what we can do for you. Thanks.